Having a little technical difficulties this morning. Okay, good morning. So good to see you all this morning. So thankful for whoever came early this morning to stoke the fire and make sure we had heat this morning, okay? You know, we're so privileged. We're so privileged to be living in the time that we're living in, to have everything that we have. And I want to talk about that a little bit this morning. I want us to begin this morning. If you would, please open your Bibles to Matthew chapter 25. Matthew chapter 25, and we're going to read this morning some verses, and we're going to look at a parable of Jesus, very familiar parable of Jesus, but I want you to do me a favor and do your best to try to put out anything that you know about this parable and try to let us take a fresh look at it. Okay, let's think about it together. We're going to begin reading in verse 14. But since it's in the beginning, it's in the middle of a section, we're going to have to look at the context. We'll come back and look at the context, but it goes along with Jesus' what we call the parable of the 10 virgins, the first 13 verses, and actually some before that. But the main point, the main point that Jesus is trying to give in the parable of the virgins is found in verse 13. And he says, "Therefore stay awake, for you do not know the day nor the hour of his return." And when he's coming back. And so he's trying to give the message, to be watchful, be ready. And now he's going to go on, in verse 14, and we're going to pick up there in our reading. But I want you to think about this. He's going to tell us now that what we're to do while we're waiting, Waiting doesn't just mean sitting back and doing nothing, And so now, let's read verse 14. Verse 14 beginning. "For it is just it," now it depends on your translation you have there. Some say, "for the kingdom of heaven," but that was put in there, the "it" there goes back to this first part, which is talking about chapter 25, verse 1, the kingdom of heaven, "For the kingdom of heaven," or "it," is just like a man about to go on a journey, who called his own slaves and handed over his possessions to them. And to one he gave 5 talents, to another 2, and to another 1, each according to his own ability. And he went on his journey. Immediately, the one who received the 5 talents went and traded with them and gained 5 more talents. And in the same manner, the one who had received the 2 talents gained 2 more. But he who received the 1 talent went away and dug a hole in the ground and hid his master's money. Now after a long time, the master of those slaves came and settled accounts with them. And the one who had received the 5 talents came up and brought 5 more talents, saying, 'Master, you handed 5 talents over to me. See, I have gained 5 more talents.' His master said to him, 'Well done, good and faithful slave. You were faithful with a few things. I will put you in charge of many things. Enter into the joy of your master.' Also, the one who had received the 2 talents came up and said, 'Master, you handed 2 talents over to me. See, I have gained 2 more talents.' His master said to him, 'Well done, good and faithful slave. You were faithful with a few things. I will put you in charge of many things. Enter into the joy of your master.' And the one also who had received the 1 talent came up and said, 'Master, I knew you to be a hard man, reaping where you did not sow and gathering where you scattered no seed. And I was afraid, and I went away and hid your talent in the ground. See, you have what is yours.' But his master answered and said to him, 'You wicked, lazy slave. You knew that I reap where I did not sow and gather where I scattered no seed. Therefore you ought to have put my money in the bank, and on my arrival I would have received my money back with interest. Therefore take away the talent from him and give it to the one who has the 10 talents. For to everyone who has, more shall be given, and he will have an abundance. But from the one who does not have, even what he does have shall be taken away. And throw that worthless slave into the outer darkness. In that place there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. Does that story grab you? I hope it does. You think about the parable in context, as I said at the beginning. You've got to go back to chapter 24 and verse 1 really to get the complete context of what Jesus is doing here, what he's talking about. Okay? So chapter 24 and verse 1, I've got it up here on the board. Jesus left the temple. So what does that tell us? He's in Jerusalem. Okay, he's in Jerusalem, left the temple, going away when his disciples came to point out to him the buildings of the temple. Say, boy, they're like, whoa, look at that. Look at these temples. Look at these great buildings here. Look at that. Jesus said, you see all these, do you not? Truly I say to you, there will not be left here one stone upon another that will not be thrown down. As he sat on the Mount of Olives, the disciples came to him privately, saying, tell us, when will this be? Okay, now first of all, notice, they came privately to him. This is not a public discourse of what Jesus is about to give them. He is talking privately to his disciples. He is on the Mount of Olives, okay? Notice the questions, more than one. What will be the sign of your coming and of the close of the age? What will be the sign of your coming? Now, he just told them that you're looking at this temple, you know, everything's going to be destroyed. Everything's going to be cast down. Okay, look at all these things. So that's one thing you've got to look at when you see chapter 24, and there are many, you start looking at commentaries and everything on chapter 24, boy, you're going to get everything. Okay? But Jesus is talking, if you will look at the context and study it, you will see what Jesus is talking about. Now, many call this the Olivet Discourse. Why do you call it the Olivet Discourse? Some fancy thing. Well, it says right there, he sat on the Mount of Olives. Okay? That's where he was at. The Olivet, and he gave the talk. So it's the Olivet Discourse. Okay, and that's what he's talking about. The first part of this, though, he is referring in chapter 24 to the destruction of the temple and of Jerusalem. Okay, and so that was going to happen. And if you will look there in chapter 24 and verse 35, verse 34. It says he's been talking to them, right? Just give them what some would call the parable of the fig tree. Okay, all these things. Verse 34, truly I say, this generation will not pass away until all these things take place. So he wasn't at that time talking about the end of everything, was he? Because he said that generation is going to still be there when these things happen. He's talking that first part there when it says the coming of the Son of Man. He's talking about coming of judgment, the judgment upon Jerusalem, AD 70, right? Those things are going to happen in just a few years. But then he starts going on to answer the second question when he says, then they said of the close of the age. Okay, and then you start looking and he's talking about some parables there after this. So in verses 36, somewhere around there, and following on through chapter 25. Now he gives parables, okay? One about the wise and the unwise servant, or the faithful and the unfaithful servant, verses 45 through 51 of chapter 24. We've already mentioned the 10 virgins, right? Chapter 25. Okay, the talents, the parable of talents, what we just read a while ago. Main point. Okay, Jesus is trying to get us to see we are to be watching. We are to be working now in anticipation of the coming of the Lord. Because you don't know when it's going to happen. There are not going to be signs for the end time, when he comes back the second time. We're not going to be signs like there were in the destruction of Jerusalem. There were some things they were going to be able to see. Guess what? When they sieged, when they went around Jerusalem, you think that wasn't a sign? Something's going to happen. Something's coming. Right? They had things going on. They were able to see things. In Luke's account, talks more about that and how he'll be. But that's not what his main point is. Now he's talking about the end. The end when he's going to return. And that's what this parable is about. So let's think about the parable as it's analyzed. We analyze the parable. So many things, everything about it. I'm just going to real quickly hit some things. Talks about a master, right? A master, a man travels to a far country. He leaves his goods. Okay, it's very important you understand that. He's leaving his goods to his servants. And it says, according to their abilities. He's leaving them to him. He is going away. Okay, and obviously when you understand the context, right, and what's going on, you make the application. Well, Jesus, right, is the master who has gone away. Right? His disciples, Jesus' disciples are the servants. Right? Now the talents. Okay, and I've had lessons on that. And not too long ago I had a lesson talking about the fact, well, what's a talent? You know, people want to talk about the parable talent. And many people want to say, well, you know, I'm just a one-talent man. You know, I laugh at that now if someone says that. Like it's like they don't have anything. You know, well, I'm just a one-talent man. You know, I'm not like these others. You know, I'm just a one-talent man. Well, one talent, okay, a talent was a weight of money. Okay, a weight, you know, and you'd say it's thinking like a gold or something like that. But one talent was equal to 6,000 denarii. That help you out a little bit? 6,000 denarii? Well, let me give you another. One denarius was a day's wages. So this one talent was given 6,000 days' wages. Now, and you remember in John's account, and you remember the woman that had the alabaster jar, and she poured the oil, on the washed Jesus' feet, anointed him for burial. And remember Judas said it'd be sold for 300 denarii, a year's wages. 300 denarii is a year's wages. 300 days. They work 6 days a week. They work 6 days a week. The average Jew would be about 300. Guess what? One talent is around 20 years' wages. Someone says, well, I'm a one-talent man. I'm just a one-talent man. If someone gave you 20 years' wages, Lance, and let's just throw out the average income, okay? The average median income, I don't know, $50,000 a year. I'm going to give you 20 years' wages. I'm not very good at math. How much is that, Keith? You're the math teacher, right? $1 million. So we don't ever say, well, I'm just a one-talent man. I don't have much. God's not giving me much to work with, not to deal with. I you to think about some things. But let's go back to our point, and we're going to get to some things. The master returns, and there's a reckoning. After a long delay, the master returns. The one that had been given 5 talents had immediately put them to work. The one that had 2 talents had immediately put them to work. Because they had done that, the master was delighted with them. Well done, good and faithful servant. Enter into the joy of your Lord. Now someone may say, well, wait a minute now. The guy that had 5 talents, 100 years of wages is what was entrusted to him. Or what was given after he had doubled it. He doubled it and he had twice that much. Look what he had done. And he said, man, he did 2.5 times more than the guy that had 2 talents. And you're saying they got the same reward. He gave us, we might say, well, something's not wrong about that. There's something wrong. Let me tell you something, brethren. I wrote this down so I'll get it right. I'll say it right. Equal diligence resulted in equal reward. It wasn't that they had to make the same amount of money. The guy didn't tell him, the master didn't tell him, you've got to do this, you've got to make this. He entrusted him to work with it, to do something with it. And so they were rewarded. The 1-talent man, though, didn't do that. He didn't do that. The 1-talent man, notice what he said. He said, Master, I knew you'd be a hard man. Oh, Master, you're a hard man. You reap where you do not sow. Gather where you did not or do not winnow. So I was afraid, and I went and hid your talent in the ground. Here you have what is yours. I want you to think about the 1-talent man failed. First of all, he failed in his attitude toward his Lord. He didn't believe the Lord was going to give him a square deal. He's accusing his Lord. I knew you to be a hard man. Notice what he says. He goes, you gather where you did not winnow. You reap where you did not sow. He said, I was afraid. Now think about this. Think about what he said. Now think about how the master reacted to it. Did the master say, well, yeah, you're right. I am a pretty hard guy. I'm really rough on you. I'm sorry about that. Did he coddle him? Did he just say, oh, come here, you just little servant. Oh, let me love on you. Oh, just come here. Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm so hard. I'm sorry. I'm going to give you a trophy anyway. You participate. Oh, no, come on. Did he do that? He didn't act like that, did he? In fact, he says that the 1-talent man failed because he was lazy. You see, lazy people often blame others for their problems. You ever notice that? You ever notice that the ones that don't do anything, they'll always come up with reasons why they can't do it? And you're a hard man. And I didn't know, I was afraid. I didn't want to do this or that. And so, listen to me. Jesus tells him, he said, man, you could have just put it in the bank. He goes, the least you could have done was put it in the bank. We could have got some interest off of it. If he didn't want anything done with it, he could have just took him with him. He could have took the bags of gold with him, and that would have been the same thing as digging them and putting them in the ground. Campbell says in his commentary, listen, when Christ comes, the slothful and unprofitable will be cast out. Not because they did not believe or because they had rebelled, but because they had neglected the opportunities which he had committed to them. I got a question for you this morning. Why do we not serve? The Bible tells us, 1 Corinthians chapter 4, verses 1 and 2, Paul says this is how one should regard us as servants of Christ and stewards of the mysteries of God. Moreover, it is required of stewards that they be found trustworthy. So he says, the slaves, or what are they supposed to do? What are stewards supposed to do? They're supposed to serve. Servants are supposed to serve. I didn't give you the title of my sermon this morning. My title is The Servant Who Did Not Serve. Someone says, well, that don't even make sense, does it? It don't make sense. The servant who did not serve. Why do we not serve? Look what Jesus said again. You ought to have invested my money, what the master said, with the bankers. And at my coming I should have received what was my own with interest. So take the talent from him and give it to the one who has 10 talents. For to everyone who has will more be given, and he will have an abundance. But from him who has not, even what he has will be taken away. Jesus was not a socialist. Jesus did not believe in socialism. He did not take from those that have to give to those that do not have. He took from the one that had one and he gave it to the one that had more. Because he was working with it. He was participating in the kingdom's work. Why do we not serve? Well, someone says, well, I'm worried about making a mistake. I'm worried about doing something wrong or saying something wrong. So then we just do nothing? We do nothing and then we think that's okay? What did the man say with the one talent? I was afraid, and I went and hid your talent in the ground. Here you have what is yours. Brethren, God has entrusted all of us with great talents and has faith in us to be faithful servants. We are to be participants in the kingdom now. Participants. Revelation 21 and verse 8 says, the cowardly and the fearful be cast out, be cast away. What about this one? Well, I'm not serving, I got a lot of stuff going on in my life. I got a lot of things going on, got a lot of things to do. Sometimes we get too wrapped up in ourselves to serve others. The servant had a responsibility to do something with that one talent. And I don't even want to say that. How about this? With those 20 years' wages, he had a responsibility to do something. Some are more interested, though, I'm afraid for us, we're more interested in fun and pleasure than service to God. Remember Moses? Hebrews chapter 11 and verse 25. Moses chose rather to share ill treatment with the people of God than to enjoy the fleeting pleasures of sin. Moses learned it. He learned what a servant is. Someone says, man, I just want to, I just got to rest. I work so hard during the week. I just got to rest. I got to have something to do. Got to have this and that. Let me tell you what, brethren, our rest is yet to come. The disciples' rest will be when this life is over. Our rest will be from sin, from suffering, and from death. 2 Thessalonians 2, 6 and 7. Brethren, we're going to continue. Those that serve God, those that are participants now will continue to serve God in the eternal kingdom. That's what God wants. Well, some people don't serve, we're just immature. Sometimes we don't serve, we just get mad. You ever notice some people get mad about things? They get their feelings hurt. They get discouraged. They refuse to involve themselves in the work of the Lord. How many times do you hear a child? How many times do you hear a child say, I quit? They may get something, they get frustrated. I quit. I'm going to do that. I'm not going to do it anymore. And we act just like them. We may say, it's too hard. Or you know what, I walked by them and they didn't talk to me. Or they hurt my feelings. Somebody forgot my birthday. And they didn't do this, or they didn't do that. So we just don't do anything. The servant who did nothing. You ever heard the saying, act like a man? Will you just act like men? If we'll just act like men and women, real men and women, okay? 1 Corinthians 16:13, be on the alert, stand firm in the faith, act like men, be strong, be strong. But you know what it all boils down to? We just don't serve because we're lazy when it comes to the work of the Lord. And we may not be lazy in our work, our work at, to make money, to provide for our family. We may not be lazy in that, but we're just lazy. Let me tell you something that Jesus showed us. Laziness and wickedness go together. He said, you lazy, you wicked, lazy servant. They go together. When Jesus calls the non-productive servant, thou wicked and slothful servant, if you go back and look at the Greek words, for wicked and slothful, they're taken from the same single base word. In fact, the words that are translated from okneros and poneros, they actually rhyme. Poneros and okneros. You see, the words boil down to being lazy and idle. It carries the idea of a person who has a do-nothing, lethargic, lackadaisical, apathetic, indifferent, lukewarm attitude toward life. That's a pretty strong word, isn't it? But it's chosen by the Holy Spirit to tell us how strongly Jesus feels about those who are apathetic, who are lethargic about their spiritual lives and their life's assignments. Jesus has no taste for lackadaisical people. People who are lukewarm with their God-given abilities, who are indifferent about their assignments. You know what that does? It leaves a sickening taste in his mouth. He loves the person, but he strongly dislikes the lazy attitudes that keep them from reaching their maximum potential. I want you to notice something. What happens to the servant who does not serve? Does he get a pass? Does he end the story with a happy ending? We all want happy endings with our movies. We watch a movie, we don't have a happy ending. We're like, I'm so down now. Well, what's the happy ending here? Well, there was a happy ending for the two servants that worked, but the one that was lazy, that did nothing, he's cast out. Notice these translations, the Young's literal translation. He calls him an unprofitable servant. Cast him out into outer darkness. The worthless servant into the outer darkness, the ESV version. The CSB, throw this good-for-nothing servant into the outer darkness. And finally, Phillips' translation, and throw this useless servant into the darkness outside. I want to tell you something, brethren. The lazy servant's going to be cast out. He's talking to his disciples. He's talking to his followers. We have the opportunity, brothers and sisters, we have the opportunity right now to invest in the kingdom, to invest in eternity. Let us not waste what our Lord has entrusted to us. I want to tell you something. This parable is very disturbing to me. I'm going to tell you why it's so disturbing. Wait, that one's supposed to be up there. Oh, I'm just kidding. It is supposed to be up there. You realize that aspirin was invented in 1897. So before 1897, when you had a little ache and pain, when you had some problems, you couldn't just go to your counter. You couldn't just take some aspirin and start feeling better again so you could keep going. We have a lot more than aspirin now. But my point is, look what we have been given. Do you realize now? Now someone said, wait a minute, oh, now we've not been given more time than anybody else. But you know what? We got more free time than all of our ancestors ever had. What are you doing with that free time? That's a great privilege that has been given to us. I looked this up, or had my wife look it up. Anybody know when the telephone was invented? Almost 150 years ago. 150 years ago. Before that time, if you needed to talk to someone, go to your neighbor or whatever, or someone a few miles down the road, you couldn't just pick up your phone and talk to them. You know what we can do now with our cell phones? I have people I work with in India. I can be talking to them in a few seconds on my phone. I have apps I can talk to people in China. Much less just by people here in the United States. That's nothing, right? Talking to people in the United States is nothing. As long as we have coverage, right? As long as we have cover, our cell phone coverage, we can talk to people around the world. If you need to know something, like when the telephone was invented, what do? Pull out your cell phone and Google it, right? I can find out, boom. You need to know something, what do? You don't go to the library like we used to have to do and all these things. You know, look at what we've been given. Look at what we have. And we could just talk about this in the rest of the time. You have been given more money than all of your ancestors. All that were before you. We can talk about food. All of us have to do what? We get to the point we have to push it away because we've got so much. What about our houses? We have been blessed so much with our houses. You know what? If Solomon saw that house right there, I don't know if you can see it right there. That would be considered a modest house. You know, a modest house today. You know what Solomon would say? What king lives there? I wonder what king lives there. What king of what nation lives at that place? Look at that. It's 24 degrees outside right now. The wind is howling. And we're able to come to a place that's 70 degrees. Or maybe 68. Whatever. Okay. But you see my point? I didn't look this one up when the car was invented, the automobile, but yeah, it hadn't been that long. 100 years ago, 115, 120 years ago. We can go anywhere we want to now. Oh, don't forget about this one right now. The plane, or the airplane, we can jump on an airplane and go all the way across the world. You can go on the other side, be over there in 24 hours or less. My point, we have been given great privileges. We have more than any of our ancestors ever have. Now here's what disturbs me more. We have no excuses. Oh, I've got a little headache. All right, take an aspirin. Take an aspirin, let's keep going. Right, let's go. Let's do something with it. Oh, I'm a little sore in this. Now, I'm not trying to downplay someone that's really hurt and really sick. Okay, I know that happens. Those things happen. But are we using excuses? What are we doing? All things that we have come from our God. How are we using the talents that have been given to us for His kingdom? This was our reading this morning. You are the light of the world. A city set on a hill cannot be hidden, nor does anyone light a lamp and put it under a basket, but on the lampstand, and it gives light to all who are in the house. Let your light shine before men in such a way that they may see your good works and glorify your Father who is in heaven. We must not hide our light. You cannot hide your light. It does no good. I go out in the mornings, and most every morning it's still dark, and I'm going out and I'm going to another base and I'm going out and I have a flashlight. What good's a flashlight if I turn it on and go? I won't be able to see anything. I can't see it. I won't guide my way. It does no good. And that's what Jesus is trying to get us to see. Listen, let your light shine before men so that they may see your good works. Your good works. What are we doing? What are our works? What are we here? We're to glorify our Father who is in heaven. Are we seeking the kingdom of God first? Well, I got to eat. I got to eat. I got to provide for the family. I got to send the kids to college. I got to do this. I got to do that. Whenever I get everything taken care of, then I'll start working for the Lord. I'm going to dig a hole right now, though, put my talents in here right now. I'm going to hold on to them, and then I'll come back later and do it. If the master comes while your talent is in the ground, what's he going to do? What's he going to say to you? What's he going to say to me? Now, brethren, I got a list. Most of this list being put together, I added a few things to it, 2 things to think about. There are many service opportunities. For somebody might say, well, I don't know what to do. I don't know what I can do. I can do this. Well, let me tell you, we've got some people that are already working on some of these things. And I thank you so much for your help. We have so many. This is just a small list. I bet we could turn around. We could probably take about 30 or 40 minutes and double that list. There are things to do. There are things to help God's people. There are things to invest to be participants in the kingdom. I want to tell you something. What would happen in this community if each one of these areas had 1 or 2 servants focused on serving and glorifying God in them? What if we had 3 or 4 in each one of these? Guess what? That'd be everybody in the congregation. We had 3 or 4 people focusing on certain things. I'm not saying that's all you do, okay? Don't get me wrong, but we got to start somewhere. We got to work. We've got to go. Notice when you go back to the context of Matthew 25, you know what they did? You know what the ones with 5 talents, 2 talents did? It said immediately they went to work. Immediately. Immediately. Brethren, you only have a limited time. By the way, I didn't look this up, but I should have. Here's some homework for you. Everyone grab your phone, not now. Grab your phone after services. Look up the average lifespan in 1897. Look it up. And you're going to see it's a whole lot less than it is today. But you know what? If you'd lived back then, you wouldn't be in the 3rd quarter. You know where you would be? You'd be in sudden death overtime. And that's where we all are. We just don't realize it. Sudden death overtime is as soon as someone scores, the game's over. And you don't know when they're going to score. There's no clock. Well, that's where we all are. We just don't realize it. Christ doesn't assign everyone the same responsibilities, but he does expect everyone to take advantage of their opportunities. We're about to sing the song, "There's a Great Day Coming." And just like the song says, just like we all know, are you ready? Are you ready for that day? Are you prepared? Are you a Christian? If you're a Christian, then yes, you've started the preparation, but then you just don't sit back and wait. You're to do something with what God has given you. Work. For the night is coming when no man can work. We can help you in any way this morning. Becoming obedient to Jesus Christ and becoming a servant. Please come while we stand and sing.
For